Welcome to ISO 55000 Alignment Process Descriptions, and thank you for your interest. We hope you'll take time after this short presentation to explore the other Triad Unlimited presentations on YouTube, and follow us on LinkedIn, and visit our website to see all our services and training offerings. The final function that we'll cover in the governance management system is ISO 55000 compliance. This will be a bit of a repeat in some respects of the previous material, but it's just to show you how this supports the ISO 55000 compliance and how it all ties together at the end. ISO 55000 compliance serves to establish processes to ensure asset management program is aligned with ISO 55000 guidelines. The whole point of AMP is to establish best practices in asset management within the organization's culture. ISO 55000 guidelines represent best practices, and AMP is aligned with its recommendations. As with other functions, there are 4 processes associated with ISO 55000 compliance. First, context of the organization and leadership establishes the organization's mission, message, and leadership elements that support them. Then we go into planning, where we establish focused asset management plans. Support and operation establishes personnel awareness and compliance with asset management theory and process execution. And then finally, performance evaluation and improvement is all about continuous improvement. There are benefits associated with ISO 55000 compliance. Defining mission and message focuses stakeholders and establishes the scope of AMP impact on the organization. Asset management plans ensure all AMP activities remain visible and provide a single point of reference for status of AMP implementation. Training and development ensures new processes can be implemented effectively. And Plan, Do, Check, Act is integrated into every AMP function, allowing precise and accurate continuous improvement. Context of the organization and leadership establishes the organization's AMP mission, message, and leadership elements that support them. This process is about assessing what the organization needs from asset management, what the organization expects from asset management, and the capability of the organization to undertake development of an asset management program. The process begins with understanding leadership goals for asset management and commitment toward realizing those goals. Development of an asset management policy is typically a first step, serving to provide a mission statement for the asset management program. The scope of the asset management program is broadly defined in this process in terms of whether it is a global program, a site program, or something smaller. Organizational roles and responsibilities related to asset management are loosely defined, pending specific process development. The intended outcome of this process is to provide the organization with some vision about what asset management will do for the organization, identify program champions and leaders who will be involved with the implementation, and how much of the organization will be affected initially. This sets the stage for the next process of AMP planning. The planning methodology establishes focused asset management plans. One of the things ISO 55000 requires of an asset management program is that it provides a framework for setting asset management objectives. In other words, the big picture of asset management developed in the preceding processes must be made actionable. Improve reliability or save a certain amount of money isn't actionable. To give the broader objectives some chance of being accomplished effectively and efficiently, the tasks necessary to create, implement, and execute an AMP must be manageable. The AMP framework is designed for just that. It identifies the management systems that comprise the asset management program, identifies the functions within each management system, and the processes that are associated with each function. Each of the functions can be assessed against best practices and assigned a grade that is used to categorize the function in terms of risk to the business. This is where the AMP framework roadmap comes into play. When the roadmap is incorporated into the assessment report, the implementation sequence and the current condition of each function is displayed. This provides the basis for AMP project development and task tracking. An asset management project plan is then documented with information that specifies the activities, the resources, and the timescales that are required for an individual asset or group of assets to achieve the organization's asset management objectives, aligned with the asset management program. The support and operation methodology establishes personnel awareness of and compliance with asset management theory and process execution. As discussed, asset management touches almost every job function in some way. Therefore, the asset management program must be implemented culturally as a new way of thinking about business processes. Asset management training, including explanation of AMP theory and process, is vital toward gaining support for AMP. The entire organization must be aware of how all AMP processes are designed, executed, and interrelated. This is important not only because personnel may be doing things differently than in the past, but also to ensure new or revised processes can be properly evaluated during change. A quality management system must be developed and implemented to ensure AMP documentation remains aligned with ISO requirements. There are some process execution considerations. Develop all the processes in the world and not one of them will improve anything if it can't be implemented with a repeatable outcome of acceptable quality. During process development, all resources who will interact with asset management must be identified. Then the roles and responsibilities of each resource should be organized into a RACI chart mapped to the asset management processes. So we tie everything that everybody does to a map of what the asset management processes require. Next, the key competencies related to the asset management processes must be identified. Competencies for each role include experience, training, and licensing or certification. Then finally, any competency gaps must be identified and bridged for each process. And typically, this takes the form of training or personal development planning. A competence management and recording system should be implemented to track progress toward competence gap closure. Performance evaluation and improvement establishes processes to assess AMP performance and manage continuous improvement. ISO 55000 emphasizes a plan, do, check, act approach to asset management. Performance evaluation and improvement is the check part of the approach. The whole purpose of performance evaluation is to validate that the right aspects of each process are being measured, that they're being measured correctly, and are evaluated at the right intervals. Remember, this is baked into the AMP framework in the form of the sustainability implementation mechanism, consisting of metrics and standards. This implementing mechanism ensures that each AMP function is consistently documented to produce data that can be analyzed and compared to desired performance to indicate the health of the function. Analysis and evaluation of the data collected is critical to making sure that the processes are functioning in accordance with requirements. Now, data is easy to collect, but if nothing is done to see what the data is saying, there's absolutely no point in the collection. When issues are identified during performance evaluation, the process moves into the act phase. Nonconformities must be documented and processed within a corrective or preventive action process. The corrective action, preventive action process can include processes like root cause analysis, Six Sigma evaluations, or other continuous improvement processes. As nonconformities are addressed, the actions taken to mitigate and prevent recurrence should be published and communicated to stakeholders. Here's the ISO 55000 compliance summary. First, establish and communicate organization's AMP mission and message. Then require detailed asset management plans with defined content and format. Then ensure all personnel understand AMP theory and intent and are competent to execute assigned AMP processes. Finally, AMP continuous improvement is built into the AMP functions by the sustainability implementation mechanism. This concludes the ISO 55000 Alignment Process Descriptions presentation. Thank you for your participation.